right, welcome to week 7. This week, we'll be talking about communication strategies. But before we get started, I'd like to take an opportunity to open the floor to Michelle or Gordon for any thoughts from last week or things coming up this week. So I'll jump in with Michelle.
Yeah, well, I think it's a pretty nice segue. We were talking about financial and reputational and political issues, and I think one of the key ways of getting people to do what you want is to tell them the right story. Whether you're talking with your constituents or with a politician, telling the story about why you need to be careful about your finances and reputation and things like that. And we've heard communications come up in a number of different contexts over the past several weeks, and so we'll be talking more about both internal communications with some of your human resources risks and external communications, whether it is preventative or whether it is in the midst of a public safety situation. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Thanks, Michelle. Gordon?
Communications is absolutely essential. But going back to another thought, I am very, very, very pleased as I read the discussions how people are tying the readings into their actual work and what they're doing and how it applies. That means so much to me that I know people are getting something out of this, and also it'll help benefit your final project. You're building up to that final project. But this whole communications issue, when you study maritime tragedies, and this did not, well, we don't know this yet, but when you study enough maritime tragedies, a lot of them involve different communications on different levels of the ship. The people on one level of the ship speak Portuguese. The people on the next level speak Spanish. The people on the next level speak something else, something else, something else. Sometimes as many as 5 or 6. There was a riverboat crash down in Louisiana, and everybody spoke different languages. That was one heck of a problem. Phoenix Police Department had a massive officer-involved shooting a number of years ago, and there was 30 some odd languages involved in trying to explain to communities as to what really happened. So communications, if they're not accurate, can be misinterpreted by people, oftentimes with very, very bad results. This is what I know because this is what I've heard. Well, maybe you heard the wrong thing. And it's one of my pet peeves on a much grander level is we are not communicating internally at all. The California Highway Patrol, 105 offices, and I honestly think that we communicate better among the 105 than Los Angeles Police Department does among their 18, where everybody's got a different way of doing business and nothing leaves an area so we don't embarrass this organization. Communications is absolutely essential. So I'm looking forward to this discussion on Tuesday night, but setting it up for Tuesday night today. Back to you, Jay.
All right, thanks, Gordon. So with that being said, let's talk about the objectives that you're going to get this session. So the first one is, what is the narrative? The importance of storytelling and framing. And I can tell you, for any of those of you who have taken the community dialogue course, we spend an extensive amount of time about what it means to frame an issue. So I think that's going to play right nicely into that. Gordon will be talking about the say-do gap. So we'll get a little bit more information about what that is. Talk about the importance of learning and sharing information, both good and bad, and how you do it. Risk communications within the agencies and risk communications with stakeholders and engagement. So that being said, let me start the conversation by going first to Michelle to talk about the importance of setting the narrative. Michelle?
Thanks. And I just wanted to follow up on Gordon's comment about Towers of Babel, which it sounds like there are so many cases of when people are literally speaking different languages. But in many cases, people are figuratively speaking different languages. Even if you're all speaking English, one person might be speaking accountantese and the other one speaking legalese and the other one, marketingese. And other people's street talk. So I think it's important to listen to hear what language people are really speaking, and also whether it's emotional language or rational language or both. Communications is very much a two-way street. Think about it not just as talking to someone, but talking with someone. Because if you want your message to get through, you really need to pay attention to your audience and to your listener. Before we talk more about communicating about risks, I want to re-emphasize the importance of talking about risk itself. We've talked at different points about how some people hear the word risk and they think, loss, danger, peril, this is terrible, we just don't want to talk about it at all. And some people are thinking about gambling, taking a chance, pursuing an opportunity. And I think it's very important to talk about both sides of risk. If people are looking at possibilities, then they may be more open to what you have to say. So this is important both for internally and for external communications. So make sure that you're on the same page when you're talking about risk. You might not even want to use the word risk at all. Come up with another way of talking about the situation. You're concerned about somebody. You want to give somebody an opportunity. So you're not just about avoiding loss, but you are about seizing opportunities and good things. And in the business world, storytelling is one of those things that's in vogue these days. You go to conferences and there's a workshop and breakout session on storytelling. I've got several friends who were journalists back in the day, and they've now got consulting companies around storytelling, helping organizations to tell their story, whether it is a nonprofit trying to engage their members and prospective members, or donors and foundations, or whether it's a company really wanting to position itself better publicly. So storytelling is kind of having its day as a very, very powerful tool for helping to get people in the same mindset that you are, or at least in the mindset that you want them to be, and sort of seeding the ground so that what you have to say is going to be received the way that you want it to be. So I'm super excited about this. The readings, General McChrystal's comments in the chapters this week they're all ways to get you to think about how to talk about things with people, not to people, in order to improve risk management.
Excellent. Gordon, what about the say-do gap? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Before we jump into say-do, Michelle mentioned the Tower of Babel. And along that same line of where you pick something from religion, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen as much as you talk. Listen. And I think I told this class on night 1 that I will probably learn more in this class from you than you will learn from me. And just last week, I learned something from Michelle G that I had never, ever considered in my life about the autism issue, and that some people lack empathy because of that. I had never heard that, and I wouldn't have heard that had she not said it and I had not listened to it. So it's a two-way street. It's absolutely essential. And speaking of religion, I had my first 8 years in Catholic school, and there was 2 priests. The nuns taught us, but there was 2 priests, the pastor, Father Mulvihill, who was about 70, and the young kid, Father O'Malley, who was about 24 or 25. And here was Father Mulvihill when he came in to give a talk. And then the Lord said, and then the angels, and it was absolute misery listening to him. When Father O'Malley came in, though, he stood up on the desk, he jumped from desk to desk, and it was multi volumes, all sorts of different, where you can't hear them, and all of a sudden the yelling and screaming. Which one do we want to listen to, and therefore which one do we learn more? When anybody accuses me of being a good speaker, well, Gordon, you really command an audience. I tell everybody who says, I want to learn how to speak, watch Black ministers on Sunday morning television. They are the absolute best presenters that you will ever meet in your life. They command an audience, they grab that audience, they have the stories, they have the volume, they have the difference in volume, they have the different types of words they use. They are absolute stone cold geniuses at communication. And if you want to learn how to give talks, please heed that advice there. But the say-do analysis, I got to be honest with you, Jay, I had not heard that in that phraseology, say-do. Make sure what you say is what you're actually doing. And so I took a look at Google. And I know how busy our students are, but if you could take a look at it, I wrote it down here, Melton, Melton, leadership.org. meltonleadership.org. There's a fellow up there with a 5-minute presentation. I liked him automatically because he was not using PowerPoint. He had a whiteboard up there and he was drawing on a whiteboard. And he talks about this say-do. What you say, make sure it's what you're doing. And he breaks it down very nicely on there. And if you could watch that between now and Tuesday night, that would be great, because I'll take off a little bit deeper on that on Tuesday night. But whether this is family relations or workplace relations or friendship relationships, make sure what you say you're going to do, you in fact do. And that Melton Leadership obviously breaks it down very nicely into, I wrote this down, character, the intent and the integrity, competence, the capacity, and the results, making sure that you have all those things in place so that what you say you're doing, in fact, is what you're doing. If you want to just lose an audience very, very quickly, make sure you show up on time. Well, if you have a history of not showing up on time, nobody's going to follow that. You make sure you treat people with dignity and respect. And if you lack those basic skills of treating people with dignity and respect, all your words for naught. Make sure you wear your seatbelt while you're driving. Ethics is so important. And you go out and see somebody taking free food or free land. What you say is what you do. Absolutely essential if you're going to have credibility with your team.
Absolutely. I mean, it's walking the walk, Gordon. It sounds simple, but yet you see it not followed over and over. So, Michelle, knowing a little bit of how important it is to share learning experiences and to be able to talk about good events and bad events, and how do you do it? And I'm very curious about how you approach the bad.
Well, I think one of the easiest ways to approach the bad is if you are, quote unquote, lucky enough that somebody else is unlucky enough to have a bad situation happen. You see this all the time that, when there's a big hurricane somewhere, all of a sudden more people subscribe to the flood insurance. Or when a bridge collapses, all of a sudden everybody's all over inspecting all the bridges in town. So if there is a catastrophe that is something that could happen in your jurisdiction, use that as an example. And because people will be engaged, they'll be tuned in to the headlines, and they'll really understand what you're talking about. You say, okay, what are we going to do to keep this from happening? It's about really drawing potential scenarios. When I used to teach policy students at Columbia, and they all had big global important issues about, childhood stunting or fossil fuel emissions or safety on ferry boats and things, I asked them to start out by describing the problem, but telling a story about it. If you're talking about childhood stunting, well, focus it on the one child who doesn't get enough to eat, doesn't get enough nutrients, and how that affects them when they go to school, they can't concentrate to read, and really draw that through their life. So if you can draw a picture of a scenario of something happening, particularly if you can connect it to some real life examples, get people to go through it in their heads. Or with some of the mentoring that I do through the op-ed project, I will always ask people to start their story with an anecdote, an example from something in their experience, particularly involving a person's experience. I mean, it's really important to get that in there. So when you are talking about something, make sure you've got some stories in there, not just some theoretical, vague, blah, blah, blahs. Talk about when the Minneapolis bridge collapsed, as opposed to, we might have a bridge fall down. And so I think that's really, really important. And then just wanted to really reiterate what you both have been saying about You really want to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. You want to lead by example, because what you're doing is giving other people material for a story, and you don't want them to go around telling a story about how this is what you say and then this is what you do. So when you start thinking about stories, you start thinking about examples. And I find it's often easier to talk about things when you have someone else, an example of, even in a different field, of something that has happened, or in the tradition of Aesop and his fables. There's all sorts of stories about different animals doing different things. And I think part of the reason those are so popular is that they allow people to talk about things without talking about humans, because that kind of hits a little too close to home. But once you can see the consequences of, Chicken Little screaming about the sky is falling, or the three little piggies and the one with the bricks doesn't have their house blow over, it's sort of easier to relate to than if someone says, hey, this is about you. And when you can start to picture it in a real live or cartoon situation, it's easier for some people to absorb that. So thinking about stories, thinking about scenarios, helping people to talk about different possible scenarios that could happen if you do something or if you don't do something, and draw on examples of what else is going on in the world.
Gordon, some thoughts on that?
Oh, God, yes. Excuse me. Yes, absolutely. Going back to my earlier comments, and I'm sure I've said this over the last 6 weeks, give me 100 cops, give me 100 firefighters, give me 100 teachers, give me 100 people in an audience. 10 of them don't want to be there. This is a waste of my time. I already know this stuff. 80, 85 are good people who will do what they're told. And then there's 5 to 10 who want to change the world. Dr. Tony Kern, in his great book, Going Pro, talks about the 3 levels of professionalism. Level 1, you're a member. Level 2, you comply with the rules. And level 3, you're constantly trying to make excellence the norm, not the deviation. So my comments now are based on the 5 percenters, because the people in this program, the people watching this video, are not the 10% who don't want to be there. They're not the 80, 85% who will do what they're told. These are the leaders. These are the thinkers. These are the 5 percenters who want to change the world. So when I say we are not learning, I'm not referring to you. I'm referring to our respective professions. All the professions represented here. We're not learning. I've probably said this already. 10 years ago, we had Ferguson. There are 2 reports out of Ferguson. I asked chiefs of police, I've been to 40 states since Ferguson, addressing their chiefs of police groups, most recently Connecticut and Pennsylvania. How many of you have read the Ferguson reports? Out of 300 or 400 people, 2 or 3 hands go up, and usually black hands. There's lessons learned in Ferguson, and we're not learning them. How many of you read the final report on the Coleraine Township fire in 2008, where Fire Captain Brocksterman and Robert Shera died the nasty, nasty death? No hands go up. We are not learning. You are, because you're here in this program and you care, but our professions are not learning. As a result, we keep on making the same mistakes over and over and over again. We are not properly communicating. And the information that we are communicating many times is incorrect. As Michelle was talking about, it's not just a language issue. It's this is the way accountants say things. This is the way lawyers say things. Anagrams get you in a ton of trouble. What ABC means to you might mean something different to somebody else in another profession. What happens when communications go down? That was always a challenge I offered people. Okay, this is what's happening, and you don't have a radio. What are you going to do? How are you going to act? Making people think about this. So there is so much to deal with in communications. I've got a list of things that I want to talk about on Tuesday night. But we need to really wake up and start learning from events, good and bad. And we're not. Just because things end up okay does not mean we don't have problems lying in wait. And when things do end up okay, and we do an honest analysis, we can lay out why it went okay, because people were doing exactly what they got paid to do. They took their role in systems seriously. The executives building the good systems, the supervisors enforcing the systems, and the line personnel following the systems. That's why this went right. We need to emphasize this. Not just all is well that ends well. When things don't go well, it is much easier to use, as Michelle said, an example outside of your department so we don't pick on anybody. But are you aware of what happened here and why it went wrong? Here was the breakdown. Here was where the systems were not taken seriously. We should learn from events, both good and bad. And finally, if you're really, really into this, and Michelle, I apologize for this, but one of my legacy projects is your Black Swan is somebody else's gray rhino. Just because it's new to you and new to your department doesn't mean it's new to our profession. We've got to learn and we've got to share. We've got to learn and we've got to share. Learning and sharing is absolutely essential.
Yeah, if I could actually add to that, one of the things I've seen so often that is so successful is high schools and even middle schools will do an assembly where an ex-offender will come in and tell their story. This is how I ended up where I did. And, here are the things I learned, and I'm out, and I really want to tell you my story so that you don't end up in the same place. And I see light bulbs go on over the heads of so many kids. And I think that's incredibly powerful. Or when when public safety officials go into school and talk to the elementary school students or whatever who learn about things. I mean, my little brother, 6'2" ex-Marine, wanted to be a fireman when he was a kid. I think because of some of that. And I actually, like Gordon, I went to Catholic school through third grade. And we similarly had people coming in and telling stories in all sorts of different ways. We knew that if we were bad, the vice principal would pick us up by our ears. So that was a pretty clear story about why we didn't want to be bad. And we similarly had one priest who dressed up like a bumblebee and came in. I remember him jumping on desks too, and he left a really, really great impression. So there's ways to tell stories that can really engage people and get them on board. But it involves two ways. It's that simple. Communication is a two-way street.
Well, I like to catch people's attention up front, and I know I'm diverting from this, but I had a program for years. I would never hire a woman firefighter. I would never hire a woman firefighter. You want to stack up an audience and get them paying attention. Start off with something shocking. And I'd start my lecture. I would never hire a woman firefighter. I'd hire 5, because if you hire one and she doesn't work out, clearly you're a sexist. You got rid of 100% of your women. If you hire 5 and one doesn't work out, you're the nicest person in the entire world. Oh, okay, that makes sense. My whole pitch on I'm in favor of doing away with qualified immunity. The cops hate me for that until I explain, as long as we're talking about immunities, why don't we do away with all immunities? Because right now, the only people you want to take them away from are the people who have to make split-second decisions. So if you can start off by getting people interested, saying something that will wake them up, maybe disagreeing with them, maybe you'll get more attention in there. But you can learn so much when people are really fully engaging with the audience.
So, Michelle, in a minute, I'm going to ask you about the communication, stakeholder engagement, but I have to ask Gordon, who's been doing this for so long, why? Why is it so difficult for risk management and communications within agencies? Do they refuse to see what's in front of them? Are they unwilling to accept what's in front of them? How can that continue to go on and on? I'm just curious from your perspective.
If you work your butt off, you get paid X. If you don't do jack, you get paid X. The bane of civil service, and there's the 5%ers, the 10%ers, the students in this class. They are as frustrated as Michelle is. They're as frustrated as you are, Jay. They're as frustrated as I am. They are going to this program and cheating their families, cheating their sleep, cheating everything to get an education so they can advance in the agency and change things. And my hat is off to you for your work. But remember that these are the few. What can we do to increase those 5%ers to 30%ers or 40%ers, getting people thinking that way? Our jobs are so crucial in American society, so absolutely crucial. And yet, that just what's the minimum standards? What can I get away with? I don't know. Also, knowledge is power. And some people don't want to share knowledge because they want to be the holder of that knowledge. So they know something that somebody else does. I see that on the individual level. And we learned this after September 11th about how agencies don't want to share information. I don't know if it's gotten any better. I hear it has, but every now and then I'll read something where I'm just shocked that it wasn't shared. So why aren't people sharing information? It's mine. I don't want to share it. I don't see the value of sharing it. I don't know how to share it. This is just a waste of time. I can't identify the specific reason, but we've got to learn and share. Learn and share.
Actually,
Thanks,
speaking of
Gordon.
sharing, Gordon's been actually really great lately. I'm surprised you didn't mention this. He's always sharing emails about this former colleague and that former colleague being recognized for something. And I think that's actually a really important ingredient of this. Make sure that there are opportunities to recognize people who are doing things next level, who are going above and beyond what is expected. Do it both internally, regularly, and publicly, where people can really be expected, and not just when they're retiring or, if I watch the news here in Chicago, it's often a picture of a police officer who was killed in the line of duty. And you really don't want that to be the only story. When somebody does a good job, make sure that you tell them, and make sure that you tell other people in front of that person. Although, not too often. If you're always praising the same person, then that's going to be a boomerang. It's going to backfire on you. But when somebody does something good, recognize it. And also, if somebody raises a flag, say, hey, we're wasting money on this, or hey, this is really dangerous. We need to, fix this sidewalk. Call that out. Talk about when somebody has reduced a risk or saved money or saved a life or, made some little kid really happy when they were out doing their job.
One of the top stories this morning was the actress who's the star on Law and Order SVU, Marguerite Hathaway, or whatever her last name is. I forget it. Yeah. Yes. She's got her badge on and she's shooting a live program in New York. A little girl comes up to her on set and says, "I can't find my mommy." And this was not part of the show. This was a little girl who was lost on the city streets where they're filming, came walking up to her because she recognized her. "I can't find my mommy." So she shut the production down and she spent 30 minutes looking for the mommy with this little girl. This makes the national news. Guess what? Our women and men do that all day long, help people out. Well, it's not a big deal. That's what you get paid to do. Catch your people doing something right. Praise in public. Let them know how good it was. I look at police department websites. I don't know anything about fire department websites because I don't think it's an issue. Police department, if you want to file a citizen's complaint, check this box. Well, why don't we if you want to praise an officer, on the same page there, want to compliment, because I know our people do a lot more right than they ever do wrong. That complimenting and ratifying good behavior, encouraging future good behavior is so essential.
All right.
Question? Did I go off on a tangent again? Sorry, Jay.
No, I'm just listening to you. I'm engaged. I'm just engaged. So, Michelle, getting back to risk communication, stakeholder engagement, I think you touched upon that. Did you have some more that you wanted to speak to?
Well, I think the other part of this is, some of the things from the reading from You Are What You Risk this week is that that it's important to create a sense of agency, to create a connection between people and something going on, and make them feel that they have the power to change things for the better. There's this thing called learned helplessness, is that so many people will see a problem and they just think, oh, if I call 311, nobody's going to do anything about it, or nobody's going to listen to me, then why should they bother? Pick up a cigarette butt, or, call to report, missing stop sign or anything like that. And really give people a sense of agency, the sense that they have the power to do something. And similarly, talking about risk, one of the things in the final chapter is really about developing a risk vocabulary, to talk about things, to be able to talk about risk empathy, to understand what people are worried about, what people are hoping for, to understand why they are going to cross the street or not going to cross the street. Once you understand why you yourself have a particular relationship with risk taking, it makes it easier for you to engage and talk with people around you about it. And public safety is all about protecting people from risks of things going wrong, of dangers, and also helping them to create a resilient community where they can bounce back if something goes wrong, whether it's a weather-related event, whether it's a crime-related event. It's really about bringing people together and speaking the same language that they are.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. Gordon, Michelle did a wonderful job of segueing right into the readings for the week. And so do you have any thoughts on that chapter, or do you have any thoughts on the chapters that came out of McChrystal where you had 15, 16, and 17 this week?
15, 16, and 17, 15, assessing the system, making sure that the systems you have in place are correct, that they're properly designed, they're up to date, that they were written by people, that's the old 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, who actually understand what needs to be done, and then making sure that you have the follow-up through the supervisors, through the employees, and making sure the system is being followed. I loved chapter 16 on systems to solutions. And if I was in this program as a student, I would print that chapter out and give it to every leader in the organization and let him or her read those things on here's the problem, here's the solution in so many different fields. That might really open their eyes as, to this, well, there's nothing can be done. And I don't want to give away the rest of the program, but the last chapter in McChrystal's book is, well, might as well give up because there's nothing that can be done. Systems to solutions. Very complex problems can be addressed and corrected with proper systems in place that are taken seriously. And finally, the last chapter here, the pre-mortem that Michelle talked about earlier on. We need to start doing that regularly when we are planning events. Okay, what can go wrong here? What can go wrong? What can we do up front to prevent it? How's it going to read after the fact? The California Highway Patrol's in trouble this week for the people who shut down the Golden Gate Bridge. It took them 6 hours to get these people off the bridge and get the bridge opened again. And you should have taken a lesson from Florida on how they got the things open in 15 minutes. Well, Florida's governor is quite a bit different than California's governor is one issue. But also, if I was in the CHP now, I would be taking a look at what Florida did, learning from that. Maybe we can do it better next time. But the readings are spot on. And of course, Michelle's book is just utter genius, wrapping this all together and making sure people understand bad things do not have to happen. We can do something up front to prevent this.
Yeah, and if I should add to that, this, the McChrystal readings about, solutions, assessing solutions, assessing your capacity to respond. So many people, when they think about risk management, they want to assess the risk, and they stop there. And they forget about assessing themselves, their own capacity, their systems, their ability to respond. And so that, for me, is one of the big takeaways of those final 3 chapters that General McChrystal writes about, is that and risk management and applying it to the real world goes way beyond the assessing the risks. And that message, I feel like I can say it 1,000 times and it never gets through as strongly as I would like it to. So I'm hoping that you all will take that away from this course. And also, as you're doing your final papers, that you're very, very clear about assessing your systems, your solutions, your control measures, that you're asking the right questions about those things, that you're not just assessing the risks, but that you're being brutally honest about yourself, your organization, your peers. And once you do that, you can improve, which is the point of all of this.
Michelle, it's funny you mentioned all that stuff. my friend Billy Goldfeder, who is the my partner at firefighterclosecalls.com, and I can say that because it's not for profit. Nobody's making any money on this. He published a piece last week, and I forwarded it to all the students in our class who have associates with the fire service. Stop pretending you're a fire department. Stop pretending you want to talk about hits. I mean, the hate mail that came in on that. What do you mean stop pretending you're a fire department? You know, when you've got, one firefighter for a county and that person is not licensed to go inside a burning building and you call yourself a fire department, you're pretending to be a fire department. And that's not good for anybody. We have to make sure we have the capacity to respond and actually take care of business as people expect us to take care of business, and not just assuming, we've got a hook and ladder and we've got this piece of apparatus, therefore fire department. No, we're not.
Well, thank you very much. I think you've got a great class coming up. I was listening to this class, and I've been listening all along. The 6,000 course, leadership course, and what you're teaching, there are so many things that intersect. Last week, we spent a ton of time talking about decision making. We talked a little bit about Gordon's reading about deciding what needs to be done. And we talked about the 5 whys. And as I listen to you talk, it's delving down again and again, and really getting to the root causation of things, not just reacting to something. As Michelle said, you have to take that time to delve deeper into it. So it's been great listening to you for the last 7 weeks, and I think there's a really strong correlation between what's being addressed in the leadership program and aligns tremendously with the risk management program. I see so many similarities. Any closing comments? Gordon's got his ruler out.
Done. According to my slide rule, we're almost done. One week to go.
1 week. Boy, that's a magic device.
Oh.
So, any final thoughts from either you or Michelle before we close out this week's video?
Lot to talk about on Tuesday night, and I want to delve down on that communication stuff. I will give you a set of handouts in the interim on my program, Your Black Swan is Somebody Else's Gray Rhino, my 7-step approach. Better investigations, learning from investigations in other high-risk industries, learning from close calls, downloading the 5 percenters before they leave, bringing back some of the 5 percenters to train, mentor, and develop, and then putting all of this into a learning management system where when people log on, they get trained and tested every day on those, as McChrystal had, those 4 things that you need to know. Whatever you need to know, we're going to make sure you need to know it. So I'll get those online so you can take a look at that also.
Right. Yeah. And Jay, I really appreciate you pointing out the overlaps with leadership. As I think risk management basically is strategy. When you're looking at the positive governance of risk, you're looking at strategy, and you're also looking at leadership, about the relationship with your team, preparing for any type of situation, of getting people ready to respond when they need to. And leadership is all about communication as well. So really, really appreciate your comments about the linkages there.
Thank you, Michelle. I think that wraps us up for this week. I want to take time and thank everyone for viewing the video, for Michelle, Gordon, and myself. I'm sure they'll be looking forward to seeing you all in the live session coming up later in the week. Thank you very much.